Representative Williams, if you'd like to lead us in the pledge. Well, today is kind of an interesting day. We have had a change up in our schedule here in the last week or so, actually less. And so many of the representatives will be joining us online. There were other hearings that occurred in Harrisburg today that kind of sprang up in the last 48 hours. But we are glad that we have the technology, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce the members that are currently online. And I will try to make sure that I will mention other people as they come online as well. Now, for those online, you all know the drill. Keep your stuff muted, and then when you have a question, just raise your hand, a little yellow hand in the bottom corner, and you will be called upon. If I miss you, shoot me a text or something, because sometimes I do miss, but I think we'll have it covered because we do have multiple angles at your views. So we have Kristen Marcel joining us online, Natalie Mihalik, Representative Mihalik joining us online. We have Representative Cabell joining us online. We have Whip Tim O'Neill joining us online, Representative Rigby, Representative McCurry, and Representative Kutz. Again, keep your computers muted and raise your hand when you have a question. And with me here today, I'll let him introduce himself. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Representative Craig Williams from Delaware and Chester counties, and thank you for having us up here at Holy Family.
All right. All right, so today we have two testimonies, or two panels, excuse me, with testifiers on them. But before we go forward with that, I'd like to recognize the Holy Family University President, Dr. Ann Prisco, for brief comments. Dr. Prisco?
Good afternoon for those of us who could join us in person here in Northeast Philly and those of you back in Harrisburg. I welcome you to Holy Family University and appreciate this important conversation that's going to happen today. I thank Representative Martina White to ask us to host this here in the only Catholic university in Northeast Philadelphia and Bucks County. At Holy Family, we pride ourselves on being the top destination for graduates of archdiocesan high schools across Philadelphia. Having received so many of these bright, talented students over the years, we know firsthand how vital programs like the EITC are for making their dreams of higher education a reality. Furthermore, our university has recently achieved the prestigious designation of a Tier 1 institution. That's a national recognition for social mobility, underscoring our commitment to providing opportunities for upward mobility and access to quality education for all. And as a first generation myself who went to college, my parents, right, go to school, work with your head, not with your back. It's wonderful that we have programs like the EITC here in Pennsylvania. Holy Family's dedication to social mobility aligns seamlessly with the goals of the EITC program, fostering an environment that prioritizes inclusivity and equal educational opportunities, thereby contributing to breaking down barriers that hinder social progress. Like the EITC program, Holy Family also strongly believes in empowering students by providing the financial assistance they need. Here at Holy Family, 98% of our students receive some type of financial assistance. And we know without that, they simply could not afford to pursue higher education. So we're very grateful that we have funding that's available through the government and the state for our students to continue to pursue K-12 education. And then, of course, think of schools like Holy Family for the higher education. So thank you all, and I leave you to your good work.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, I appreciate you allowing us to be here. And I'd also like to say thank you to Representative White, who couldn't be here today. I did talk to her this morning. She speaks very highly of this institution, and it's very much appreciated that you allowed us to be here. Today, we're going to be talking about the EITC and the OSTC programs. And over the course of about the last decade or so, these programs have positively impacted so many different families in ways that many people don't quite appreciate. And it's obvious why it would receive historically such bipartisan support every budget year, it seems. We're running into a little bit of a hiccup on that this year, but I do believe that when it's all said and done, and we are going to get a budget done at some point, it's taken a little bit longer this year than it usually does, that this program will be again funded and well funded because it does offer such benefits to people across the board. And as Republicans, it is our initiative and part of our agenda to provide choice for parents because we believe that parents make better decisions for their children than we can, than Harrisburg can. And it's important that we keep funding and increase funding for programs like this so that those children have those choices. But it's also true that these programs provide a much broader benefit than just kids going to school. And today, amongst other things that we're going to be hearing, we're going to hear perspectives on EITC and OSTC that are unique from libraries, pre-K early education providers, and parents of children who benefited from these programs. So I appreciate all the testifiers being here. We're here to listen to you, to build a record so that we could take this back to Harrisburg so we can listen in person. And we also have a number of representatives, as I mentioned before, online. We've been joined by Representative Torn Eckert, who has joined us online as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first panel. We have Zakiah Boone is the first testifier. Excuse me, and then Christy Bucher. Y'all could come on up, and if you keep your testimony 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll do some Q&A as well. Again, for those online, make sure you raise your hand and keep your computers muted. Thank you. Ms. Boone, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Zakiah, I know it's a tough one, so no worries, no worries. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Wonder Spring Early Education. We're a nonprofit provider of early childhood services in Philadelphia, Montgomery, and Delaware counties. I'm honored to be here before you today to share our experiences with EITC. We have about 10 locations across the greater Philadelphia area, serving nearly 1,000 children annually. And what we have found is that contributions given through the EITC program directly support our pre-K children with preventing summer learning loss, with providing extended day pre-K services so families can work, and with actually helping to increase literacy outcomes at the kindergarten level. So current pre-K subsidized funding supports families, low-income families that live about 300% of poverty. Personal family stories at Wonder Spring include foster children who've been able to get access to pre-K services for the full day, not just the school day, so those foster parents can work. Summer camp, which is sometimes inaccessible to children, thus causing summer slide. We've seen that those children, once they've been able to have access to scholarships through the EITC program, we've been able to track a measurable increase in their kindergarten performance. So September through June are usually covered with programs like Pre-K Counts and Head Start. However, the 9 to 3 just isn't enough for families. Wonder Spring is so proud and honored to be recipients of the EITC funds that allow us to be able to do what families need, be there for them when they need it, eradicating their poverty, helping them to maintain their lifestyles. We're really, really honored and hoping that this program will continue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Republican Policy Committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Christy Bucher, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Library Association. In Pennsylvania, we have 467 state-aided public libraries. Approximately 85% of our public libraries are IRS-registered 501c3 nonprofit charitable organizations. The most recent data shows that 42 public library entities have registered as Educational Improvement Organizations, or EIO. While this is just under 9% of all public libraries, I'd like to share some examples of how public libraries use EITC funds. First, I'd like to talk about an example in Somerset County, where they use EITC funds to support a STEAM initiative, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Reflecting from the librarian's perspective, I'll never forget the look in one young man's eyes when he first realized that he had the ability to code things. This was a case where the person's perception was that jobs involving robotics, automation, and computer programming would be beyond his capabilities. After a fun activity where this young man successfully led a small educational toy robot through a maze by drawing a series of color codes, I walked up to him and said, "Do you realize that you just wrote a computer program that controlled a robot?" The look on his face when he realized that he is capable of learning to code was priceless. Clearly, libraries are contributing to both the education of our young people and also the future workforce. When looking at the dollars, libraries are stretching every dollar they receive. Some libraries receive a few $1,000s each year, while larger libraries such as the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh receive over $300,000. Most libraries have reported that the EITC funds may only be 1 to 2% of their total income, but they represent as much as 80% of the children's programming budgets at the library. Without these EITC funds, libraries wouldn't be able to hold as many programs or serve as many children. Quality programs require credentialed and qualified staff, and many other grants only ever cover materials with no support for staff. Multiple libraries noted their appreciation that EITC funds can be used to help cover staff for these programs. I will note that several libraries indicated some struggles with EITC funds. Beyond completing the application and providing quality programs, libraries have to do a fair amount of outreach and marketing, as there are multiple entities asking for these same EITC funds. While the funds are used in both well-resourced and distressed communities, I'd like to share comments from the Reading Public Library. They say they primarily use EITC funds to help support a program they call Food for Thought. This program teaches kids how to prepare healthy, nutritious foods. Children learn how to properly prepare food, food safety, basic culinary skills, how to follow recipes, basic literacy, and much more. All this knowledge and skill is presented to them in a fun and tasty program that seems more like a party than an educational class. In Reading, where poverty is high and all students qualify for free breakfast and lunch, educating kids on healthy eating and nutrition is extremely important. It also helps provide a healthy snack to hold those children over after school until dinner time. In closing, while EITC funds are not widely used by libraries, just less than 9%, those that are receiving the funds are very appreciative. Libraries receiving EITC donations are able to provide staff that organize meaningful and educational programs after school and during the summer. Thank you for allowing me to share this information, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I often do in beginning my questioning at these policy committee hearings, I want to express my gratitude for you and your staff. You're always hitting the most difficult topics that we are taking up in Harrisburg in the General Assembly and doing it in our communities, which means we have an opportunity to hear from our constituents and people who are being directly impacted by these issues. And I also want to thank our witnesses today for offering your thoughts. And both of you have hit on my central question, but I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper. You were trying to be courteous with your timing, and I now want to give you all the time that you need to give me a more fulsome answer. To put the issue just a little bit more pointedly. We're in the middle of budget negotiations. The Senate has passed a budget, sent it over to the House. The budget contained EITC and OSTC. And inside the House, in a committee structure, it was stripped out of our budget and sent back to the Senate. Part of our purpose in having this hearing today is to talk specifically about why these two programs, these two tax credits, are so vitally important to the education sector, which involves more than just schools, right, as you aptly pointed out. Here's the question that you both hit on that I'd like you to speak a bit more about. If it remains the case that EITC and OSTC are stripped out of the state budget and that is no longer available to you as a revenue supplement, what are you going to have to cut from your program?
Thank you for that question. So not just at WonderSpring, I also serve as on the board of directors for the Pennsylvania Child Care Association. So not just WonderSpring, but programs across the state will have to cut extended day hours. So instead of families being able to work 9 to 5, they can only work 9 to 3. That's 2 hours per day of programming for an entire school year for hundreds of programs across the state. That's number one. Number two, summer programs will be cut. So what happens from June until September when school is back in, those programs will be cut. Again, not just at WonderSpring, programs across the state benefit from these funds. And so those children, those families lose a lifeline to help them survive. They lose the opportunity to be able to remain gainfully employed and contribute to the economy in a meaningful way. And of course, that burden often falls on women, more often women of color. So if they have to leave the workforce because they don't have anyone to care for their children, we're not talking about K-12 public school education. We're talking about, I have to go to work until 5:30 p.m. Who's going to watch my first grader over the summer? That's the kind of impact we're talking about, taking away families' ability to sustain themselves, to remain independent, to be able to provide what they need for their children and their families on an ongoing basis. They need this lifeline. I'll give you a quick story about the foster family I referred. 2 foster kids placed in emergency foster care because their biological parents were no longer able to take care of them. The mom comes to us and says, listen, I'd love to be able to take these 2 kids. One was age 1, one was age 4. I'd love to be able to take them, but I can't quit my job in order to do that. Can you help me? Thankfully, we had the EITC scholarship funds to allow her to be able to provide a loving home for those 2 foster kids. One is now in kindergarten, thriving, doing great. That's the kind of impact these dollars are having. It's much more than dollars and cents. These are lives we are impacting here using these tax credits. So I urge our government to continue to make sure that's an option for families.
Thank you, Ms. Boone. And just a couple of follow-ups on that. Are you aware, especially in the low-income community, of whether or not you can sustain a family by working 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon and not during the summer?
That is absolutely not an option for families. They cannot afford to take the summer off and they don't have a shore house that they can just go to and hang out for the entire summer. And sometimes even 9 to 5 isn't enough. Sometimes they've got to go in a little early, stay a little late, pick up an extra shift on the weekend. And we're able to help them. Programs across the state are able to help those families do that to make ends meet.
And I didn't mean that in kind of a smart aleck way. I just want to bring to high relief what the problem is, right? So to the extent that there are some in the General Assembly who believe that families, especially single-parent homes, right, can sustain themselves on a 6-hour-per-day job 9 months of the year, I think that's a bit specious. And the fact that you're offering these wonderful programs for children, not only to basically provide them daycare, right, but an actual education to prepare them for kindergarten and thereafter when you're helping them with summer learning loss. Thank you so much for your answer. Ms. Bucher.
Thank you for the question. So public libraries operate on a complex system of funding in Pennsylvania. As I mentioned, most are nonprofit charitable organizations. They do receive other money that is in the state budget, the public library subsidy. But the EITC, even though it's a small percentage of libraries who use it, represents programming. And I want to talk about the importance of programming at libraries because reading is such a fundamental skill for life. And inspiring that love and capacity of reading starts very much in the early years. But it's more than just providing books. You have to engage young children with the books, and one of the ways to do that, the examples that I gave, were really hands-on activities using books and reading as an aspect of that programming. The EITC allows those programming to purchase small robots, to purchase culinary equipment to teach at the library, and the staff to create those engaging programs. If we didn't have EITC, particularly those summer programs would be much smaller in scale. They wouldn't be putting books in the hands of children for them to take home for their home library and continue learning. They wouldn't have those incentives to engage with reading as a foundational skill. So it is very important for those who are using it.
Right, and I think you said in your earlier testimony that much of this money that's brought in through EITC and OSTC is used for programming, and that the programming would probably have to be done away with because you have revenue for other aspects of brick and mortar buildings and the acquisition of assets inside of the building, but the programming is a big deal. My question for you is a little different. My follow-up question, I should say. Part of the objection that we get to EITC and OSTC is that this money is going to exclusively religious institutions. How many of the libraries in Pennsylvania are owned by religious institutions?
The public libraries we're talking about, none.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We had Representative Schern join us as well, and Representative Eckert.
Thank you, Chairman Kyle. I appreciate, sorry I'm not there in person, but I appreciate the testimony today on this really important topic as we head into next week where we know this is going to be an issue. I think it's important to note, I know that Representative Williams kind of highlighted a number of weeks ago where this was on the table for discussion. It's important to note that the Senate passed this an education budget bill that included overwhelmingly bipartisan support for EITC and OSTC money, and got to the House, and House Democrats stripped it out immediately. So, and it's also important to note that over the last number of years, even Governor Wolf has been supportive of EITC funding in budgets that he signed. So it's extremely frustrating as we sit here today and try to highlight the importance of this, knowing that it's important, that it's affecting lots of folks in our communities. And you guys are a true testament to the types of entities that folks don't, I think, realize that benefit from this. So along those lines, you've talked a little bit about who this benefits, but talk about the families that that you guys are helping here. Who are we talking about here? What family, what kind of opportunities are you folks providing for families in your community?
Thank you for the question. So these are not necessarily the lowest income families because there are other funded programs such as Child Care Works in the state of Pennsylvania that provides an option to cover some of those programs. These are the families who are hanging on by a thread and are trying to keep themselves afloat. These are the families who go to work every day, pay their taxes, feed their kids, put up their Christmas tree or whatever it is they do, light their menorah in order to stay afloat day by day. And so what happens is when these families feel like they're on the brink, their back is against the wall, they have to make a choice. Do I stay in the workforce or do I leave? That's the choice that these families are faced with. Most of the time, at least at Wonder Spring and in many of the programs in the Philadelphia area, those are single parent households, those are women-led households, and those are multiple children households. So we're not talking about just one kid left out in the cold. Across the state, there are many different types of programs. Some of the summer learning loss programs are geared towards STEAM activities. Some are geared towards literacy. Some are geared towards drone building, whatever it is that children are interested in. But the bottom line is the children are engaged in meaningful learning and care so their parents can contribute to this economy. There is an economic benefit to making sure people are able to go to work and contribute and give back. And so those are the kinds of families who are here. You want a name? Let me share one. Natasha. Natasha is the foster mom who didn't want to leave her job that she worked very hard to keep, but she didn't want to leave these children with no home once they were brought to her doorstep for emergency foster care. There are thousands of Natashas across the state. Foster care is as we all know, is a whole separate problem. We don't have enough foster parents. So let's make sure they're adequately resourced so that all kids have access.
You know, Representative Ecker, as far as the families that the libraries are serving, it is a range of both well-resourced libraries, but as you heard my testimony, Reading Public Library is high poverty area, and so those folks are doing amazing jobs. But even in the well-resourced areas, the programming really is important for spurring on that lifelong learning, that love of reading and engagement. And there are families who might be in those communities who simply cannot afford a summer camp. And so the library programs become summer camp of exploration of activities and as well as reading along the way.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible. I mean, my family's used our local library even for, my wife's a teacher, but in the summertime we go to our local library for some of the programming that they have that has been incredibly useful to our kids in various different ways. And, you know, I think it's really important to highlight these types of things because ARC has always been about providing hope and opportunities for families and children. And I think this money is one way to help those folks that may not be even the most lower income, but that in between, that just are on the brink, like you highlight. I think it's an incredible story, and it's something that I think is why we're here highlighting this. It's why we had a hearing in Pittsburgh. It's why we're going to have a hearing in Harrisburg to continue to show the importance of EITC funding in our Commonwealth and why it's so crucial to fund it this year yet. So thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I also have a couple of questions, but I do want to step back because I think the testimony here today already has been very powerful. And we get caught up in the fray of Harrisburg and what I call the capital intrigue and the budget process and what's happening. And so I think sometimes we lose sight that the actions we take have real consequences. And you both have laid out very clearly what the consequences are of stripping funding from this very successful program. And as Representative Eckert noted, a program that has had and enjoys broad bipartisan support. In Pennsylvania Senate, I believe there was just 4 no votes. And with the education package as a whole that came over, it even had support from stakeholders across the board, not just in the private school system or libraries or community. It was across the board with public schools and everything else. And I do think it's important as well just to take a further step back and define what the EITC is, the Educational Improvement Tax Credit, and then of course the OSTC, the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credits, where employers can direct funds to places that can in turn give scholarships to people and to entities that you all benefit from greatly. So Representative Williams commented and asked the question, what would happen if this funding was stripped? And I think that's a very pertinent, important question. But we're advocating to actually increase this funding. We wanted to see that $150 million increase in the funding that was in the budget. And my question is the other side of that. How would it benefit you all? Is there more room for more EITC funding, and what could you do with that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think, as I mentioned, only 9% of public libraries are registering as EIOs and using EITC. Certainly, if there were more funds, potentially more libraries would apply and use those funds. But even those that currently exist, it does represent a small part of their revenue, but a huge impact on their programming. With more funding, they could certainly serve more children, have both summer learning programs and after-school programs. Sometimes EITC just funds the summer programming. So there is opportunity to certainly expand and grow, and it also then perhaps makes it less difficult for the libraries to get the local donations. It is competitive. There are a lot of organizations looking for these same dollars and these same tax credits.
I was going to say the competition. If there were more dollars, we could serve more children. It's that black and white. At WonderSpring, we have the capacity to serve an additional 700 children just within our current space if we had more funding to serve them. And so when you ask what could we do? Well, perhaps we could make sure more children read by 4th grade. Perhaps we could make sure more families rose above the poverty line in Philadelphia. Perhaps we could make sure more teachers were able to actually do their job because they had planning time and didn't have to work to cover the entire day to serve those kids in extended day care. So we could actually solve some of our societal problems through education if we continue to fund it and at a very strong level.
And I had a contact once with an administrator from a school in West Philadelphia, and my district is Beaver in Washington County. It's on the exact opposite side of the state. In fact, my district is closer to Columbus, Ohio, than it is to Harrisburg. And I hadn't spent much time in Philadelphia, and this administrator was explaining to me that they did a survey within their 7th grade class. So you're talking 13-year-olds. My oldest son is in 7th grade, 12, 13-year-olds. And during the course of that survey, there was a question that was asked is, what do you believe your life expectancy is? And the answer came back, the median answer was 28. It was 28. And this school administrator looked at me and said, listen, like, this isn't education. We get caught up in these buzz terms. Like, this is about delivering hope for people. And what you all are doing is that. And it's a very lofty mission. And I appreciate the effort that you do put into it each and every day, because it matters. And I'm glad to see that this program is one that is helping you do that, because you all are much more effective at doing it than we are. Which goes back to the initial point of giving choices to people that are on the ground, that see it on a day-to-day basis, that actually understand what's happening in their communities, instead of some bureaucratic direction from Harrisburg that doesn't really take into account what's actually happening. So thank you. Thank you for your work. You had made mention as well that when I'm not sure if you work on this side of the equation or not, but how this works is there is a certain amount that can be donated. Are you aware of more demand for donations if we were to lift that cap?
Absolutely. There's a mad dash to make sure that we get our applications in first. There's a wait list essentially in order to make sure that programs can have access to these funds. WonderSpring is very fortunate. We are familiar with the process, so we can kind of get in early, if you will. But there's absolutely a demand, more of a demand than there is supply for these funds in the greater Philadelphia area, and again in other programs across the state.
I think for public libraries, the aspect that you have to kind of keep in mind is there has to be business in that community that's willing to donate. And we do have a lot of rural areas that don't have the business in the community that are going to benefit by making the donation to the public library. So it's not just one. There is demand, there's certainly potential, But certainly the library, as I mentioned, the capacity for them to do the work for the application, to go out and identify the businesses in the area that might be eligible to take advantage of the tax credit. It's not the smallest libraries, and many of our rural communities are served by very small libraries, so I don't know that it would help them, but the existing programs that are there, I think there would certainly be interest in expanding.
Well, we know in Beaver we appreciate your library, and sometimes I don't know if the librarians appreciate the Kale kids all the time.
I'm sure they love their energy.
Yes, and they have lots of that. But my wife and myself as well, we're constantly at the library. And when they were younger, we used to go there and do programs and stuff. So I understand and appreciate what you're saying. All right. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions? Any questions? I think. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
I just want to echo the chairman's sentiments. I mean, part of what I love about coming out to the community to do policy committee hearings is we get to meet people like you who are true angels, right? I mean, you do this because you're driven by it. It's not a high profit arena. This is giving back to the community and doing something that you love that often goes unseen. And I hope today we've indicated to you that we see you and we love you and appreciate you a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got to say, we have another panel, and that is going to be a very difficult panel to follow. But the parents panel, Mr. Haney and Mr. Faria, if you all could come up and get yourself settled in. No rush. The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the ladies before us. I'm a parent, and Ryan here also is a parent, and I'd like to just say thank you, thank you, thank you, and one more thank you to everyone involved in giving us a better life. I work from 8 in the morning till 10 at night every day for the last 3 years, right? And I've chosen to do that because of the circumstances. And I'm not from the lowest, I moved to this country. I'm an immigrant. And the circumstances that I moved in were difficult. And I was blessed that we went through a system where the principal of our middle school referred, Archbishop Ryan as one of the options. Because she said it's a tried and tested system. Your children don't or didn't understand the culture, and for them to enculture that process was very important. So they went through middle school, and then they came to Archbishop Ryan High School, and I've had one daughter pass out of this school, an honor student. I have a freshman who's also an honor student, and she's in the system. Now, this is an institution. I'm not undermining any of the other schools in the Archdiocese, but my personal interaction with this school it's like an extension of the family. I don't have to worry once my daughter walks in those walls. Now, she gets into the school 45 minutes earlier because she's trying to get a scholarship by helping a sister there. So that also contributes towards her education. So she's working her way through high school. My children have grown up in the system where they understand what the parents are doing for them, what their teachers are doing for them. So everything is part and parcel. They learn a value system. They are looking at, and it contributes positively. My highest worry, and I mentioned this earlier to someone, was my daughter arrived 1 minute late and she got a demerit, right? In other high schools, there are bigger issues. There's a lot of other things that you hear of, and this is the only thing. And she had tears in her eyes. I was 1 minute late and I got a demerit, and I have to do detention, and I laughed and when I got that message, and I said, okay, we have to do better. We have to be on time, and when she went for her, she went to Mr. Panipresso after, and she understood the value of what needs to be done. You have to do better. Her swim coach said, you know, I saw you on that list, and she says, yes, I was a minute. She said, yes, but you have to do better. So that's the constant push you get from this institution that I call high school, which helps you to do better. As I stated, my older daughter went through this institution, and all she's done is look to do better. She's contributing to society. She and her friends from this high school and other high schools got together and started an online tutoring program during COVID. They had about, you know, between 50 and 200 kids. And this is not a money-making business. It wasn't a nonprofit. This is their time that they get online with kids from you know, second grade all the way up to high school, help them do their homework. And that's their way of giving back. So, you know, for me, had I not had this kind of funding, that would hold me, I mean, it would really pull me down. And I would always be worrying about what's going on in school today if it were a different system. What might have happened today? What's going on? Is it this trouble or that trouble? And we see it on the news. If you want to get demotivated, you watch the news for 45 minutes more than you usually do, and you'll get to hear. And that's I'm not saying those are real things happening, but you have to be positive. And our kids are busy. If it's mathletes, then it's swim, or then it's the choir, or it's music. They're busy. They have it all stacked up, one behind the other. If it's nothing, you're going to watch a basketball game over the weekend in school, right? And we're right at the side of them, their parents, their teachers. I see, it's a 7, 8 o'clock game that's happening, and the principal's there, or the coaches are there. And these are coaches who are teaching in the morning and coaching in the evening. So, you know, it's an institution fostered by positivity and love. And that's why I say thank you, because we've been fortunate enough to receive some of this funding, and we are grateful. We don't know what we would have done, and you guys are like guardian angels that come to our aid in some form or way through the institutions, and we are very grateful.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me, and ladies. Again, my name is Ryan Haney. I've been at the school for 20 years as a soccer coach, and currently I have a senior in the high school and a freshman at the school. And this program, I've seen benefit kids from the beginning when it started till now. And like you guys have mentioned in the panel before, has done a great job, that if there was more, it would even benefit more kids. If you cut it, it'll hurt the school directly. I heard one of the senators or representatives speak about being that middle class or that in-between person, and that's the firemen, the police officers, the guys that are getting by, that kind of seem to get hurt the most, whether we're not too poor or we make too much money, and then we kind of get cut out a little bit. So you see these parents come to us that don't quite qualify for a ton of financial aid or a ton of things, and then you're asking them to allocate a higher percentage of their income to an education that they can't really justify in the neighborhood because they don't make enough money to afford that. So this program gives us a little bit of benefit or a little bit of help or funding to help get some of those kids through their 4 years and give them that chance to get that education that, you know, the gentleman or the business owner or the people that are actually partaking in it or the businesses they're doing it to help those kids that they got, those educations. You know, it's a way that on the school side, I know our president and our administration, they try and target some alumni to get that money, go after those alumni to maybe help them participate in the program, and then we can turn that money in to help some of the kids in the school. The program's been great for my family. I'm not a full-time employee of the school, so I don't receive free education for my children. I pay just like every other, like Mr. Floyd here, or any other parent in the neighborhood. I give back my time. Like I said, I've been coaching at the school for 20 years, and I've seen the benefit for these kids that come in like a little bit where they don't quite qualify enough, and it just helps those parents a little bit be able to afford the tuition. And again, they work more than 40 hours a week, and they still come back, you know, not enough to kind of make things end, so they're scratching everything together to keep it together. So to lose that program completely would damage the school. And again, I can only speak for Archbishop O'Brien, but I know there's tons of other institutions that benefited from it. If we were to cut that program, our enrollment would be really struggled. And that would affect the neighborhood. It would affect the school. It would affect tons of kids that way. If we were able to get more, maybe we could get some more enrollment in the school to keep things going. I know you mentioned about the religious institutions, and they benefit from it a lot. I hope that we can maybe get more, maybe help those tax guys, maybe, because I know when I'm speaking to some alumni, if it's a way they can help, they do want to give more. If it's a way they can get involved. So to see that lose or to see this program, it would be damaging to the school. And if we could get more, it could maybe help us generate. So thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, if you were here when the first panel went, you know that I put on a helmet and go straight at the issue. So here I come. The objection to not only this, but other programs involving school choice, which for you, Mr. Faria, that's entirely what this is about. I assume you would have been in the public school setting, if not for EITC and OSTC. Their objection is that if we put this money into choice programs like this, we're taking money away from public education, when in case that's not true. We've actually increased public education funding and also increased this funding. My response has been over the years that increasing public school education funding and not correlatively doing the same thing for school choice means that you're telling some parents, wait for 10 years until your school's better. We'll promise in a decade we'll make it better. And my answer to that is, how can you tell a parent today that the school system's going to be better when their child's already done with it? And so, particularly, Mr. Ferrari, I would like for you to address without talking about the specific public school, what you believe your family's life would have been like had you not been given the opportunity to go to Archbishop Ryan.
Thank you for that question. And before I answer, we went through this process of trying to look at schools, middle school and then high school, and the options. We visited the high schools, the public schools, as well as the Catholic and the private ones. What I saw as a parent was scary, because they do have a system where they say, well, we have a blue ribbon system and then we have the regular, but they're all kids interacting, and what happens in the classroom is not what defines the school. It's the entire the atmosphere, the environment of that school. And I don't know if my kids would be picked on, right? I don't know if they would get the same opportunities that they're getting today. I would not have been able to afford it. I would constantly be worrying. What that does to my family today is it's taken the worry out totally. And that's the negativity in every family. You put stress on a household, and I don't mean the mom, the dad, or the kids, on everyone. You put stress, it's like a rubber band. And that's what's happening to society today. You're stretching everyone mentally, right? And that's a huge problem in society today. And you stretch and stretch, and they're getting negative and negative. And whatever environment you place them into, they're getting negative. So I don't know if my kid would end up being one of those kids who would be bullying another kid coming in, because that's the system, that's the environment. I don't want that to happen. But 9 out of 10 times, that possibly would be happening, because that's the environment of hustling. Now, you put your kid in a school to hustle, or you put your kid in a school to shine. And that's what I'm seeing today, right? And I came into the parking lot, and my car was close to the line, and two boys parked at the side of me, and they were struggling. So I put my car behind, and I went back into the line properly. And the minute I walked out of my car, they came up to me and they said, "Thank you, sir. That really helped us out," right? So they didn't have to, but they did. And I wished them, and I asked them, how do I get to the auditorium? And they were so nice, and they told me that's positivity. A positive act will react in a positive, reaction. And we need those positive reactions in society for it to be a progressive society. everyone's fighting hard. Everyone today. Tell me one person who isn't, right? And this school system, whichever, if we get the choice to go to a system, I would, most of us are working more than 40 hours. I would do it time and time again, over and over again, so that my kids, my children, get a better future. And I want that for everyone. My success story is great, but for me to be able to share that story with thousands and thousands of families, that's a benefit to society. And then if everyone's kids are busy doing stuff, with all the technology taking over, there's so much negative. If we're just looking to protect them, we'll keep worrying and worrying and worrying. This is a tried and tested system. Use it, spread it, grow it, build it. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. And in fact, the use of these devices in my house is also controlled for exactly that reason, because I feel like, first of all, you can lose hours of your day here, right? It used to be that we went to work to check our emails, and now work finds you at all hours of the day, and that's just not even talking about social media. So I would like to flip the question kind of on its head a little bit, Mr. Haney, because I believe you're an alumni also of Archbishop Ryan. And so tell me about your story a little bit. Did having an opportunity for this education turn the outcome of your life?
Yes, so thank you. It's a great question. I graduated in 1997 from Archbishop Ryan. My father worked 60 hours a week. My mother was a stay-at-home mom at the time. Again, Catholic school education. In the neighborhood that I grew up in, 99% of the kids went to Catholic school, and that was an opportunity that those parents worked hard for. At the time, the tuition I think was $2,800 at the time, if I can remember correctly, at Ryan. And my sister, I had two sisters. One passed away her freshman year, but another one who graduated through Ryan. Myself that had that benefit. And again, I got out of college. I went to Temple University, and when I got back, I went right back to Archbishop Ryan and started giving back. And that's how I was raised, and that opportunity to be put through that, the discipline, the giving back mentality, work hard mentality, all those things were installed in me through a Catholic education. Things have gotten different in the neighborhood. There's been a lot of change in the neighborhood. As you can see, if you do some research on Cardinal Doherty or North Catholic, some of the bigger Catholic schools back in the 70s and 80s that have closed, an opportunity like this program is keeping a school like Archbishop Ryan relevant and giving kids an opportunity like myself in that neighborhood, the current neighborhood, a chance to get that education, to get that discipline, to get that accountability. And I think it helps then install some giving back mentality to those kids. Because a lot of the coaches and a lot of the people at the schools, whether it's Father Judge, Archbishop Ryan, in the Archdiocese, I can speak a little bit of that because I have a little bit, I'm sure in Pittsburgh they have their Archdiocese and things like that, and Reading and different areas, that the mentality is we give back to those schools because it's given us so much. We don't feel like we're giving back. And to see a school like Ryan, if it was to close or something negative, and if this was a way that we could keep it open, it could be huge.
Vice Chairman Eckert.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chairman. I got a question here, kind of following up a little bit on Representative Williams. When we talk about the programs that you guys are involved with, your children are involved with, some of the criticism we hear is, when we talk about school choice, is that, kids should go to the school district that their zip code is telling them they need to go to. From your guys' perspective, with having children in this institution, you've chosen this school. You have said, okay, this is what's best for my family. Why shouldn't that not? What would you say to folks that want to take away your ability to choose where to educate your children?
Thank you for that question. Would you take your children to a doctor knowing that he wasn't qualified? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or would you take push? I mean, give them medicine that wasn't good for them, right? And that's a choice. I mean, you cannot tell someone that they have to do something. Would you buy a car that you don't like, right? So we're making all those choices for things that we purchase and buy. These are our children. They're an extension, physically an extension of you and me, right? I want the best for them, and every parent would want the best for them. Why shouldn't that be a choice for the parents? How does someone, I mean, does the system get to decide, you know, the system, a product, your kids will become a product of that system, and the choices they make from coming through that system could be good, bad, or ugly. And then the system will come back to you and say, you made the wrong choice. But given the environment, see, people are not bad. It's the choices that they make are good or bad in society. So, you know, it's a funny thing that someone would ask. But I would like to, my children cannot make that choice for themselves today. And as a parent, I'd like to make that choice. And if there's a system telling me that I have to make that choice, that just binds my hands and my legs, and mentally I would be in a situation of fatigue, especially knowing that that system, that choice that I'm making is not the best choice for my children. Right? So that's my take on that.
Yeah, and I thank you for your answer. I think we as Americans, freedom and the ability to choose our path and set our own future is inherent as who we are as Americans. And giving parents the ability to choose where to send their children and how to educate their children, I think, is the most fundamental American thing we could talk about. So I appreciate your testimony. I appreciate you guys sharing your story, and I'm committed to continue providing opportunities for your families in Harrisburg. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Eckert. I'm going to ask a few questions, if that's all right. So we've heard a lot today about the damage that could happen if we take resources away from this program. And it's real, and I understand it's real. We were in Pittsburgh actually yesterday at the Archdiocese right next door to it. So we were there, and there's similar stories there. And it was a eye-opening experience to see how much of their population actually benefits from these programs, something like 60%. So my question to you is, there are, I think, some flaws within this program. I think one of the flaws is how convoluted it can be and navigating it and that type of thing. But as a parent, how did you hear about this program? And are there ways that we can make it more accessible to parents? Obviously, increasing the funding, we're advocating for that 100%. We do every year, and we'll continue to do that because of people like you. Because there's thousands of people in your situation, and then thousands more that just don't have access to these resources. So we're going to keep advocating for that. How could we make it better coming out of Harrisburg? And how did you find out about this program? How did that message get to you?
So, as a parent, the program kind of gets introduced to you from the school, I guess, when you express some problems or some things where they see where you fall when you do apply for the financial aid package, so they kind of educate you on that. From the school side, it's an extremely hard process to get people to sign up for it, to do it properly, to get them to buy into it. Again, I was telling earlier that when we made like jokes about it, like just write it off. No one kind of knew exactly how it worked when it first kind of introduced. And you can't really go to a business owner and just say, it's a write-off. It's really, doesn't really kind of, and sometimes they're a little more educated. So maybe the education on that side, the process to get through it, the forms, the amount of paperwork and stuff, if it can be minimized or somehow more direct of how it's handled, and then how those funds are actually allocated and what they use with it. So I guess there's like two things we worked on: the business owner and the tax credit side of it, and then also the schools educating their parents and educating the availability of it and how it can be used would be great.
I was introduced to the program wholly by the school. we put in our forms, and they came back to us and they said, this is a grant that you are receiving. So it's the school fronting this at all. I would not have known about this. It's the institution that kind of fosters it and puts it out there and introduces it and advocates it. So the school really is pushing it all, and we've been blessed through the school to be introduced to the program. So it's all the school. I would have not known.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's kind of, I had this question yesterday as well, and it's interesting because there's a backlog in the system. So obviously it's gotten around over the course of the last decade or so. So people know that it's there, but do parents know that it's there? Do people know what could be available if we did increase it? And how that could impact thousands of other families that are out there looking for other options for their children. And I think that's something that as legislatures we could work on and make sure that people understand that there are choices out there. I loved your analogy regarding, would you take your kid to a doctor that doesn't know what they're doing? And I don't think you'd be pleased if someone told you, well, we'll make sure we get that doctor the resources that doctor needs in the next 10 years, and then we'll take care of the situation then. That's basically what opposition to these types of programs is saying. It's what Representative Williams was saying earlier. The answer to opposition to this is, well, we need to put more money into the system that's already there. Now, granted, we do put more money in. We've never taken resources out of the public fund for public education and put it into this program. We have always increased both. And we were doing that again this year as well. So it's a bogus argument out of the gates. But the answer that, it just needs more money, that's been the answer for the last how many decades? There's other problems that are there. There's other people that are doing it correctly, and there's ways to get those kids into places that could do it correctly. So I appreciate you guys coming here and testifying. Do you have any other comments, any other questions? It really matters because, I'll repeat it again. A lot of times in Harrisburg, we get caught up in the fight and in the political storms that are occurring and the Capitol intrigue that's happening, and we forget that what we do impacts people on the outside. It impacts families, and it can really change lives for the positive. It could also change lives for the negative if we're not doing the right things. So you coming here, helping us to understand this better, building a case, and giving us content to take back to our colleagues and to help explain why these programs are so important, that's how we're going to win these battles. So I truly appreciate your effort here to advocate on behalf of your children and your families and also families across this Commonwealth. So thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So that's all the testifiers that we have today. It was a wonderful hearing, and we saw how the EITC program and the OS, the Opportunity Scholarship Program as well, is benefiting children across the entire Commonwealth. It's given people opportunities, regardless of their zip code. And, a kid doesn't have to fail just because their school is failing. Parents should have options. Parents should have the ability to do what they need to do to ensure that their kids are getting the best education that they can. And we are going to continue advocating for that. And we're going to continue seeing success because this program has shown us success. And we're going to continue hearing from people like you to help us advocate for that. So our next hearing on this series of hearings that we're having on EITC and OSTC funding is Tuesday in Harrisburg. We had one in Pittsburgh, today in Philadelphia area. And we'll hear from more parents, more educational institutions, and continue to put faces to this funding and to these programs. So until then, this committee is adjourned, and thank you all for being here today.